Here, let's paint, mix the colors and pay attention to how dark or light this color is. I'll start with this peach. So we all know that's mainly red, and I have only 2 reds. If you wanted to know the name, please reference to the video description. So one is towards yellow, and the other one towards purple. Okay, so I have those 2 reds, and we already know that the main value of this is probably somewhere here. Okay, but I wanted to make sure that I keep some lightest value of my reds. How do you keep the lightest? You make a very light red, any kind. Okay, then you put somewhere over there, and you keep this 2 handy. You can keep looking at the reference photo, say, okay, here are lighter and probably yellower, but let's forget about that for now. So how light is that? I can do that. So it's exaggerate that little bit. Probably that's good. We always have time to go back, add a little bit of darker, but if you get it too dark, and when it's dry up, you may not be able to do it. Okay, so now look here. Here is darker in value, so I'm just adding the reds to make it a little darker. Okay, easy, right? So mainly I'm just using these 2 reds randomly, and here on top of that, it's darker compared to here. It's lighter on here. So what I do is I'm going to put more reds in there, make it darker. So that should be a lot easier if you think this way. Yeah, it's just the red. Okay, just make it darker and lighter. Everything else is secondary. So now, in the middle here, we have some light in value, and then we have some dark in value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a lighter red, more towards yellow, and do that. And I want to make sure that the lightest probably is here, so it's automatically, it's a smooth transition. And you can see here already lighten up. So how dark that one it should be? You see, it's not there. Go back to almost there. So I'm going to add more ones still wet. See, there is nothing else. I'm just using the 2 reds combination. You could just even use 1 probably. It doesn't hurt. But just to get the correct value at this stage. Okay, so now give a little wash, and you see the darker color will come down in this way because the gravity. Okay, and here you can tell there's a little bit of yellow, but it's very light valued, so I want to keep that. So I just have, you see this in the palette, it's very light diluted. I'm going to dilute it. Get something lighter, is diluted. Okay, so now it blends by itself and it connects. And here, you see here, the value is about that. So I'm going to add more reds in there. And underneath it, it's more yellowish peach. It's actually, the name is white peach, but when we paint, you see here how dark that is. Be more sensitive to it. It's this dark. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to get the darker color. So I have the red. That's probably, yeah, this is very transparent. So I'm going to add a little bit of a cobalt blue to darkening down, because here it turns into purple anyway. So push this dark colors in and double check and see if the value is better. Is it better? It's darker, right? So keep doing this and don't think about the colors. Think about values. You see here, now you're more sensitive towards how dark red that is. And there is a little belly over there. So that's what I'm going to do, add more. And here's going to dry up, probably be lighter, but I will keep eye on that and make sure that the values are added if it gets too light. You see here is a lighter, and I think here is a little grayed down because it's on the other side. So I'm even using, again, there use some black, very, very diluted, and you see what happens. Then the yellow it up with very light yellow, and we get this one in there. I keep some dryness so we can have some interesting depths. Okay. Well, now a little bit more like an apple, isn't it? Okay. So now you see the other side. I kept adding this edge and in hope that this will get a darker value on the top, because that's the outside towards the paper. Okay, and here's a little bit more. Keep watching your values, and then we can probably, you say, how about here? So I wanted to make sure that even here is the red, but it is transitioning little smooth. So I'm just doing this. Add a very light value to it, and add a very light value to it. Okay, so keep as that. Okay, then when it's waiting for it to dry a little bit, see how dark or whether I got it dark enough, I'm moving on to this orange, yellow orange. You see it's pretty light. And here is a highlight. I don't know whether you can see it. The highlight is even lighter. It should be this way. And I'm going to exaggerate a little bit if I can. I will make it closer to the white paper. So start with just yellow. Okay. And I have another yellow. So I have the names is also in the description. So you can see that. And I'll keep this part as the lightest in value. So I'm going to just paint around it. And now the red comes handy when I make it a little orange-ish yellow. Okay. And I'm putting more. So you see here, this side, I'm adding some yellow ochre into it to make it a little richer and darker. Okay. And here's more. You don't really need a yellow ochre. You could use the reds over here to put into it to make it orange. And just remember, this part when I'm making is a lot darker than this part. Okay, in value. Okay, so now, see, it's pretty much, if you pay more attention to value, it's actually getting a lot easier. So you see, this is the value over there, and you see I can definitely afford to make it a little bit darker. So the transition of the 3D ball will become a lot more obvious. And you see here, that's probably the color I need to get to. So I'm going to get it more reds here first. And looks a little too red. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably, let's say, put some blue in there to cool it down so it wouldn't be so hot. Okay. But you see, when I'm doing that, it's also changing the value. I wanted to watch how much blue I put in there. I don't want to make it very dark. Okay, so that probably is a little too dark. Okay, so now we are getting there, closer in value and closer in color. See, I wasn't really paying attention to what color do I use because it's mainly just yellow. But if you blend your color, focusing on the value, your color is going to be right. Okay. And now move on. So this is still pretty wet. Move on to this one. So how about this one? The kiwi is brown. But is if you, by comparison from this part compared to that one or compared to that one, you can see the kiwi actually is somewhat blue. So I said in the how to mix blue section, I mean the video, what we do is we can simply start with mixing grains. We start with blue. How about that? So I'll put a blue in there. You see, first thing is it's too light by comparison. How dark that needs to be. And of course, the kiwi in reality is not a blue kiwi. So what I needed to do is I needed to make it a lot darker in value first. It's another way to correct the value. Is then I would think about the yellow. I can just get these yellows in there to blend it into a green that we need, or greenish brown. So in that case, aiming for the dark value. So how dark that needs to be? It probably needs to be this dark. Yeah, it's too green, but let's not worry about it for the minute. Let's get how dark we need first. Okay, so that's how dark we need to have by comparison. But definitely it is not that green. So what we do is we put some complementary color in there, and it's going to change that one for me to be some color that closer to the reality. So we're getting the value, the darker kiwi, and we're getting the color. You see how simple that is if you think the value first. So I'm putting more blue there to make it darker. And of course, it goes back into blue. Then I'm adding some reds in there to bring the color back. You see how rich this color is, and the dark is so much more interesting. So now it's getting almost right. And I leave some on the top. That's because the light is from the top, so it's a lot lighter on the top. You see, I started painting a dark blue kiwi, but it ends up with this color. But I was mainly focusing on to make it darker. Okay, so that's the value. So now before we move on, we compare this value one more time. And now we are almost there. And we see the yellow, and we are almost there. Okay, and then I kept some highlights, so that's good. And for the reds, it's there. And the lighter part, it's there. And we are lighter part and the darker part. So it's almost there. And now you get these three values right. And then we can worry about the details and, add more shadows, etc. So that's how you think colors. But in terms of thinking color, you think about the values. And this is a very useful tool. You can use this one to look at your palette as well.